This video is to accompany the brand new TOFT booties range. So this is a classic TOFT pattern, but it's been totally reinvented. I've reworked it from the very beginning to make sure that it now fits with all of our new techniques. And for the first time ever, it covers all sizes. So the patterns can be bought separately for infant, junior and adult, and that will cover sizes from newborn, which is even smaller than this one here, so from newborn right the way through all the child sizes and up to a UK 9, and also a bit of an explanation for how you can go even bigger still, so it could go right the way up to any size that you need it to be. There's 10 new designs in the range. This is Hank the sheep. They're all named after and based on our favourite Ed's Animals characters, really the most popular characters that come from the collection. But you're going to need 3 techniques, really important techniques to be able to make these booties, and that's what I'll cover in the video that follows. So one will be invisible rows. So this is working your double crochet stitch in rows, but doing it in a different way, really, that means that it'll be invisible to your rounds. So rather than see a proper texture change, it will be invisible to see that you'll be working part of it in rows. The next one is to pick up the stitches. So I'll explain the construction of the bootie itself. So it'll be picking up the stitches and then front post, back post, which is how you create that lovely crocheted rib that you'll finish off the cuff with on your bootie. So in this video, I'm going to explain a few techniques. The first one being about the invisible row technique. Now this is because of the construction of the bootie. So when you're making your bootie, you're going to be following totally normal techniques for all my animal patterns to begin with. So you're going to be working in a non-stop spiral in rounds, increasing by 6 stitches every round. So you'll make a flat piece like this. That forms your heel. Then through the next section, what you're going to do is actually working in rows. So you'll be turning and going backwards and forwards rather than going all the way around in a spiral. Now, if you do this by totally turning your work, you'll create a change of texture. So let me just show you what I mean. So say I'm going to do it on 6 stitches. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. And if this was going to be a normal row, what I'd do is I'd turn round and I'd actually go into the back of the stitch like this and do 6 back. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Then I'd turn again and I'd do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Now if you use that method, it will create the right shape for your bootie. There'll be no issue there. But do you see how on the bottom, because I'm turning the work and I'm working into the back of it, what it does is it actually changes the texture. So you will end up with obvious rows. You'll have a segment through the middle of your bootie that will have a different texture to it. So this invisible row technique that's detailed on your pattern, what that does is it allows you to create the double crochet stitch in rows, but looking like it's worked in rounds. And that's because we're going to be working into the back of the stitch. So do your double crochets as normal when you're going in one direction. Then when you turn, rather than doing what I just did, where I'm going to be working into the wrong side with my hook, you're actually going to bring your hook the other way around. So hold your hook like this and bring your hook through the front. Yarn over with your yarn and take it back through to the back. You turn it around on your hook and then you bring your yarn through both stitches. And what that does is it's actually creating a fabric that has the same texture as when you're always just working into the right side, because you're doing your hook back to front. So take your hook, bring your next stitch through like this, yarn over and take it through to that side. Then this is the trick here, is you turn this hook like this and then you take that stitch off. Now it's a little bit slower, but you're not doing it for the whole bootie. You're only doing it for a few rows through the central section before you then return to rounds again. So let me just do that again. I'm going to go right the way across so that you definitely have got that as a technique. So my next stitch is there. I come in with my hook again. I've got my wrong side facing me, so I'm coming in the right side effectively. Yarn over, turn that stitch around and then take that off. So I'm coming in like that, yarn over, turn my stitch around and complete. It does get faster the more that you do as well, just to reassure you if it feels very awkward to begin with. For those of you that have made lots of my patterns, it is the same technique that we used on Bow the Dragon if you opted to do that there. So then when you turn around again, you'll actually be going into the right side this time. So I'll go across 6 and I'll do another row for you so we can definitely see the difference when you're making that choice about whether you want to go invisible or not. So 5 and 6, so that's working into the right side as I normally would. But to do this invisible technique, when you turn it around, rather than going into the wrong side, which will become a very bit visible texture difference, you come into the right side, but from the back like that, yarn over, turn that stitch around, and then finish your stitch off. So I'm just going to run across these 6 stitches again so that you can see the difference between opting to do it normally or opting to do it with that little bit of extra twist in it that will just make the texture the same. So then the next thing I'm going to show you will be picking up the stitches around the edge. Ooh, 1 second. Can be a little bit tight. And you see that here where I went backwards and forwards working into my wrong side, I get a definite texture change. I get a ridge that comes on the surface of the fabric, whereas when I'm doing this invisible one, you'll get exactly the same stitch texture here as you would be if you were working your normal stitches. And as you can see from the bottom of this bootie here, that's your section there that's worked backwards and forwards, and this is the sections that are in rounds, and it does just keep it much more consistent when you're making it. So the next bit to show you really is how to pick up the stitches. So once you've done these bits backwards and forwards, you're going to be doing a chain and then attaching that onto the far side, and then you move to working in rounds again, back to techniques that you're very, very familiar with. But once you've got this shape here, you need to pick up the stitches around the edge in order to start to attach our cuff. So you'll make the base, and then as you can see here, you're going to be going around the edge, working normal trebles to begin with, and then your front post, back post on the top to make that lovely looking cuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach my yarn in here on the back corner. Now, as a right-handed person, I'm going to be going in on this corner. As a left-handed person, I think you'll probably find it easier if you go in on this corner here, but I'm going to go in here. And I am going to go into my first stitch along the back. So I should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 stitches along my back. And I'm going to chain 3. So 1, 2, 3, and then treble across the rest of the stitches there. So a treble 7. So to do my treble, just to recap, because this might be a new stitch to people that have only made animals before rather than booties, your British treble stitch, you go around your hook first, in the next stitch along, yarn over to the point where you've got 3 loops on your hook. Then you yarn over and come through the first 2, yarn over and through the second 2. So that's your treble. So I'm going to go all the way along these stitches, working a treble into each one. So that gives you 8 stitches along the back. Then you need to take 7 off the side. And what I want to say here is it's not as clear to see where you'd be taking those 7 from on the side. It's not as clear cut as when you can see the obvious stitches. But my advice to you is don't skimp on the corners. So I apologise there, I've practiced this once and then pulled it back and split that yarn there when I did it. I'll be able to hide that when I do the stitch. But what you need to do then, you've done your 8 across the back because you used 1 for the chain and then you did your 7 trebles. You need to get 7 out of this side. So what I'm going to do is you see where I look at the edge here? Again, ignore that bit. I've got a definite 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 obvious stitches there. I'm definitely going to work those 2, 5 and then 2 more into the corners because that'll stop you getting any form of hole. So I'm going to do 1 here into my corner, 1, then into the stitch that you can see there, 2. It feels like a big gap to the next one, but you won't see it at all by the time that closes up. So 3, 4, 5, 6, and then I'm going to do 1 into the corner, because the corners will be where it will create a hole, if it's going to create a hole anywhere. So then I'm back to seeing stitches again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'll be trebling across the top there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then I'm back to my final side where I need to get 7 again. So do you see I've got in between these wrapped bumps, I've got obvious stitches. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 across there. It's less of an exact, it'll depend on how neat you are when you've made these rows. Row edges can be quite messy for some people. So just do your best to make sure you've got 7 stitches, but it doesn't necessarily matter exactly where you take them from. Just keep them nice and evenly spaced. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Then what you need to do is just chain, slip stitch should I say, to the start of your top of your start chain. So you see you've got your 1, 2, 3 chain that you started with there. All you need to do is put your hook into the top of your start chain and slip stitch like that. Then what you'll be doing is you'll be chaining up again 3 for the next time round. So the last thing that I need to show you is front post, back post. But first I'm just going to recap the decrease when you're doing this style of treble. So normally you'll be doing your DC2 tog exactly the same way as you would with an animal, but here we're going to do a decrease with these trebles. And I'm just going to show you the method that I find the neatest when we're doing this. So rather than doing, as you might presume, basically a longer version of the double crochet 2 together, this is the way that I'd recommend decreasing when you're going to be taking those 2 stitches out of this first round. So what you need to do is go round your hook first, go in the next stitch along, yarn over, and to this point where you've got 3 loops, and yarn over and bring 2 of them off, and then stop at that point like that. And then do the same thing again on the next one. So come through to the point where you've got 3 on your hook, and then take all 3 off in one motion. And that'll be a slightly neater decrease when working in the treble. So let me just show you that again. So say we're going to decrease again on these next 2 stitches. Yarn around the hook first, in that stitch, yarn over to the point where you've got 3 loops on your hook, but yarn over and take 2 of them off, leaving 2 there, and then go yarn around your hook again into the second stitch, come through 2 first, that point you've got 3, yarn over and take all 3 off again in one motion, and that will decrease your 2 down to 1. So that gets you the correct number of stitches to be able to do your front post, back post. So the last thing to show you is the front post, back post technique, which is what creates this lovely deep rib around the edge. So to do that, you need to go round your hook first to do this treble, and a front post, you will go down one side of it and up the other side and be pulling that treble forwards that sits beneath you. Yarn over and through to the point where you've got 3 loops on your hook, yarn over through 2, yarn over through 2. So that was a front post. Then a back post, you'll be pushing that backwards is the way to think on it. So come around your hook first, do a back post one. Then you're going to come in the fabric from the back, push that way. So push that away from yourself, yarn over and through to the point where you've got 3, yarn over through the first 2, yarn over and finish the stitch. So now we'll be on a front post. So you come round in the stitch and do your treble. Then a back post, we come round, we're pushing it backwards. So what we've got to remember to do is come underneath like that and finish it off. So then a front post, I'm just going to show you a few more times because this might be a very different technique to you, but it's a great thing to learn because it means that crochet hats you're now going to love, because it's often used on crochet hats to form it is a rib effectively. So let's get to a front. I'm going to do a front post again this time round. So round that stitch, there's your front post, and then a back post. You come in the back of the fabric, push that backwards and do your treble. And that's what creates the front post, back post rib. Now, the last thing to mention really is the fact that the way that the sizes work, obviously they need to get longer in the foot for each size. So just be aware that when you're sewing on your features, the faces will be proportionally longer for the larger sizes. So your shortest sizes in that weight will be a little bit shorter in the foot. Your larger sizes will get longer in the nose. My advice on sewing the features into place is in the smaller sizes in each of them, your ears want to be right on the edge of your cuff. So do you see how I've got the ears in line with the front of my cuff? As your faces get a little bit longer, you will probably want to pull your ears slightly forward, and that's just so that your face shape will stay the same proportionally. What I mean by that, if you look, so this is the smallest size of chunky in the giraffe, whereas this is the largest size in the polar bear. But if you imagine the face there, ignore the back of this, you'd be putting your eyes in about the same place as that. So keep the muzzles nice and short. Then you'd be sewing your ears about here rather than sewing the ears a long way back, because you'll find you get a very long face on the front of your booties if you move into those larger sizes. So I hope you really enjoy it. There's not a lot else to show you really. I'm really excited to make these for my whole family in all the different sizes. In fact, we want several pairs between us, so I think I'm going to be quite busy. Last few things to mention really is about walking in them. So with the baby booties, it's not as much as a concern, because in the smaller sizes, obviously they're very unlikely to be walked upon because your baby won't have learnt to stand up yet. But when you hit these larger sizes, please be aware, I haven't worked the fleece onto the bottom of the ones that have the fleece on. So that would go for the lion and the sheep, so that the sole is nice and free. Same with the orangutans, that the loop stitch isn't worked through that central section, because that means then you can stand on that no problem without feeling like you're standing on the bumpies. And the other thing to mention is, if you are somebody who, like me, has wooden floors in your house, you will need to think about them becoming non-slip, because the last thing you want is a child tearing round in slippers that would be quite slippy. So we've got two solutions to this that will suit you. One is sock stop. So what that is a little silicone dot that you can just pop onto your stitches as you deem fit. So you can either cover the bottom with zigzags if you wanted to, but I would tend to recommend small spots will be better, because it means that you won't lose your stretch in your fabric. Or what I've gone for here is cork sheets that we now sell with a template to go with the booties as well. And what you do is you print your template and you draw it onto the back and then cut around it, and then you can just do a blanket stitch around that edge in order to put it into position, and that will mean that you can then have a non-slip surface if you are going to wear them on a wood.